All right, so here we go.
This show is brought to you by Safety FM.
Welcome to Safety Wars for November 11th, 2022. I want to thank Jay Allen for letting us fill in for him on the Rated R Safety Show today. If you are listening to this, this is the Rated R Safety Show. This is going to be released later on as a podcast on Safety Wars. Who am I? I am Jim Posel, your humble safety warrior. I run a podcast called Safety Wars here on Safety FM, along with 17 other of my colleagues who are on every major podcast platform. And I also run the Safety Wars Live show from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. every evening, Monday through Friday. So, what are we going to do? I have a rather lengthy discussion today on the Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky. We're going to talk about a little bit of the news, and then we'll go into that. So maybe some of the stuff you haven't heard on the news about safety and commentary and everything else. So, this is a story I've been interested in for an awful long time here. All right. Oh, and by the way, this is from the border of liberty and prosperity. What does that mean? And the highway to the north. Border of liberty and prosperity and the highway to the north. This is being broadcast out of Rockland County, New York, which is on the border of New Jersey. And the motto of New Jersey is liberty and prosperity. So we're on the border here. Highway to the north is the New York Thruway. And yes, I pay homage to one of my inspirations and one of the people who talked me into doing this, who is on a international, actually, everything's international nowadays with the internet, but show. He's also a professor out of the University of Kansas, Ian Punnett. So he encouraged me to do this stuff. And, after I started talking with Jay Allen, he said, Jimmy, why don't you go and do it? I don't know the guy, but I dropped him an email, and he teaches this stuff, right? Broadcasting at the University of Kansas. So he suggests everybody do this. Give it a try, because you never know. How am I doing? I don't know. All right. So this is a story I've been following for an awful long time. So this week, the COP27 Climate Summit is Conference of the Parties, right, for 27th meeting, right, where there's a debate going on that the rich nations should be compensating the poor nations for climate disasters that are already underway. This is an ongoing debate, and this is actually probably going to come to a head in the next couple of years here with the climate change stuff, because there's a lot of, and if you listen to us on Safety Wars, we had Dawn Becker from People's First Insurance on a couple of weeks ago, and she had discussed the cost of things, where you are probably underinsured, especially with the cost of materials being what they are. You're probably underinsured on your homeowner's insurance. We're going to go to our next story, which reportedly, right, the U.S. and we need the sound effect here, right? U.S. confirms and held talks with Kremlin over nuclear threat. Ukraine hit by emergency power shutdowns. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky said the country's armed forces are advancing parts of the country, loading last night, and this is a couple of days ago, right? Forces in a state of active defense in some parts of the east and south are gradually pushing back the enemy. And what the whole gist is that the White House's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, confirmed reports that the U.S. had talked to the Kremlin recently in a bid to lower the rhetoric around the possible use of nuclear weapons. Thank God. That's a situation we don't ever want to deal with. Hurricane Ian shows how older populations are vulnerable during disasters. So you could go on the FEMA Independent Study Program, and recently, last time I checked, there was about geriatric care in disasters. But basically, what happens is a lot of times is that mobility issues and experience issues. Hey, I lived through the one from 30 years ago, so guess what? I'm, blah, blah, blah. Also, medications. All different types of situations with dealing with the elderly. 61% of Florida residents 45 and older said they plan to shelter in place during the next bad storm. And 2019, the comparable figure was 55%. So I don't know. We're all about disaster preparation here on Safety Wars. We dedicate the whole month of December to disaster preparation. Here's another one with a disaster. Basically, 9/11 responders are facing a nightmare scenario because not only did they deal with it on 9/11, which I happen to witness from my rooftop in Hoboken, New Jersey, was they're changing benefits and changing programs here for them here, and they changed the healthcare manager for them. So people are not getting the care that they need from this. I think that they should probably straighten it out. Study shows that texting toolbox talks to supervisors helps make things happen. Well, guess what? I've had this idea for many years. All my clients have all their safety meetings in advance. We can either send them out via email, or we give them to you one shot, print it out. That's how some clients want them. We do this, right? Or if you're keeping it at the forefront, hey, this is the toolbox, this is the toolbox, this is the toolbox every week. Guess what? You're going to have better compliance. You're going to have better everything. Now, if we recall in the construction industry, one of the things is that you have to communicate hazards to the workers, right? Regularly. Safety meetings are often a very good, toolbox talks are safe, whatever we're going to call them is often a very good way. Usually a company will have a safety meeting. That's like a big thing, right? Toolbox talk. Hey guys, we're going to worry. Watch out there for this, and this hazard, right? And we do that. You can give us a call at 845-269-5772 or contact me at jim@safetywars.com and I'll hook you up. So here we have a sanitation worker in Chicago that was crushed, right, by a garbage truck. So basically, it's all on video. So basically, the fire apparently he got it caught in between the truck and the fence. It's being investigated, and I mean it's a gruesome injury here. How he died was through crushing. But let's remember, a lot of times, this is like one of the OSHA Focus 4, right? Caught in between hazards for construction sites. In this case, is a sanitation job. That's very bad to be aware of. And it could very easily, you could get wrapped up in that. So some more information on a story we covered last week or earlier this week about, and yesterday on this program, was on a worker that died in an explosion in Houston. And it turns out that, yes, the person was operating a welding torch and a fuel gas was ignited while the worker was operating it. So the article here, right, is from a political website. But it's really, it's political, but no, I'm going to quote it. Following Saturday's accident, UP management sent out a predictable press release saying, our thoughts are with the employee's family and coworkers. All right. Well, again, that's what you're supposed to say. My question on all of this is this. What actually happened there? What was the context of this? I'm sure. And if everybody knew that this is what the end result is, they would have done things differently with this. So let's go to commercial break. Then we're going to talk about pushback strategies that are used against safety professionals.
You are listening to Safety Wars. Tomorrow's Safety Today.
In the professional safety community, communication and planning are just a few keys to your program's success. The question many practitioners have is, where do I start? Dr. Jay Allen, the creator of the Safety FM platform and host of the Rated R Safety Show, has built a global foundation to help you along the way. Go to safetyfm.com and listen to some of the industry's best and most involved professionals, including Blaine Hoffman with the Safety Pro, Sam Goodman with the Hop Nerd, Sheldon Primus with the Safety Consultant, Jim Pozell with Safety Wars, Emily Elrod with Unapologetically Bold, and many others. As individuals, we can do great things, but as a team, we become amazing. Dial into safetyfm.com today and surround yourself with a powerful force of knowledge and support.
You are listening to Safety Wars. Tomorrow's Safety Today.
OSHA recordables, first aid cases, catastrophic losses. You want answers? So do I. This is Jim Polzel with Safety Wars. So, I'm just going to call this one of the Safety Wars exclusive. You're not going to hear this stuff anywhere else. And it is the cause of, some would argue, the solution to a lot of our problems. What am I talking about? Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. So what's this doing on a safety show? Why is he talking about this with safety? So a little bit of history here for everybody. Before I was involved with Safety Wars, and though there is a history behind this, I worked on various political campaigns in the 2000s, about 2000 to about 2010. So there was a 10-year period I was volunteer. I actually worked on a couple of national campaigns you've heard of. It's not important which ones. And I came across Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. And I said, man, this is mind-blowing. And it's used in politics all the time. It's the play manual. And there's 13 of them. Now, first of all, let's talk about this, right? Starting when I hit my milestone birthday, I had said, I'm old enough. I'm not going to go and mince words anymore. I'm getting to that point. I'm old enough. I've been doing this at that point at almost 30 years. I'm going to talk plainly. I'm going to talk honestly. There's not going to be any doubt as to where I stand or anything else, because the people who I consider very successful, they didn't mince words. They said what they wanted to, let the chips fall where they may. And usually the chips fall in your favor when you're like that. But the idea is that we're not going to be hostile or anything else towards anybody else. Pardon for the cough here. Getting over COVID. I could easily call these the COVID broadcasts from yesterday and today. So what's the bottom line? In our industry, we're missing a lot of soft skills, right? Yesterday we talked about leadership, right? What it is to be a leader. I wasn't taught that. I had to learn that. Same thing with pushback stuff. What I call 13 cultural pushback strategies. Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, right? Every one of these things in every toxic working environment I've been in has been an issue. Constant negative and toxic workplaces, right? No, they have consequences for mental health, right? Training classes often right? They attract very difficult people and contribute to a negative safety culture. So the question always is, how do I manage a work crew or a workplace that is working against me? And I offer no solutions here. I'll share with you a couple of strategies I've used over the years, but you have to figure out what works for you and your working environment. And also, are you going to just say, see ya? No, sayonara, adios, head on out. Because I tell you what, it's not worth it to be in a toxic work environment. Really not worth it for you mentally, for your family, or for anybody else. So why are safety people hired? Let's talk about this. Think about it, right? Use the theater of the mind. Corporate stewardship, meaning, hey, they want it on paperwork that there is a safety person. Contract requirements, they're doing a contract. Have to have a safety person. Regulatory or insurance burdens require a full-time safety person to manage safety compliance. Insurance issues, right? A visit from OSHA or some other regulatory situation. Or remember, EPA, your state or local DOL, Department of Labor, or your state and local DEP could show up and say, you know, it's sort of like they see a problem, they could report it to OSHA. So it's sort of like this. Let's say that the police are investigating a crime, and that crime is, I don't know, whatever. They find a dead body in the closet. Well, I think they're going to investigate the dead body. I don't know, regardless of what they're there for. They find out that you're committing insurance fraud. They're probably going to report that, right? Or do you have a catastrophic incident or high accident rate that you're now a target of OSHA? That's how you get hired. Now, what did I say? Now you're going to say, well, Jim, some companies are responsible, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, they are. Absolutely. Those companies are out there. I've worked with a number of them. A lot of companies out there say, look, we're going to put focus on safety. We're going to put the focus on helping people. We're going to put the focus on this, and we're going to go and do it. A lot out there. But often what we find out that safety issues are often human resource issues. Human resources does not want to do their job and fire someone. Just like yesterday, we talked about the story with one of my good friends. I consider a very good friend, where I said to her, hey, look, do you have the authority to hire, fire, or discipline anybody? Direct the work, anything like that? She said no. Well, I said, explain to me how you're responsible for anything. That's a human resource issue. So I often get brought in to deal with employees and outright refuse to do things, and the management won't discipline them. So let's hire a safety consultant. Guess what? I'll take it. No problem. And what ends up happening is human resources will not discipline anybody. They're not familiar even with OSHA requirements at all. Remember, they're not the people that are in there going to OSHA classes. They did not go down to the local OSHA outreach training center, like here in New Jersey, it's Rutgers, and go out and do whatever, take class. They didn't do this. So they hire us to come in as a consultant and to go out and do things. All right. So there's a lot of criticisms with the rules for radicals. A lot. I'm not going to lie to anybody here. It creates an us versus them mentality, right? That's originally how these were intended by Saul Alinsky. We'll talk about him in a minute. But they can be used negatively or positively. And it's more important to know what you're up against and be able to analyze it, be able to codify, be able to organize it. Because if you're able to do that, you're better able to organize and to come up with a response and a way to manage this stuff that's not out there where you have to be confrontational and, safety wars. Safety wars isn't about going out there. Hey, we're going to fight a war here. That's not what it's about. Safety wars is about fighting that safety war that's against the stuff that's working against it, the hazards, the attitudes, and everything else, and learning how to manage them in a professional, reasonable, legal sort of way. That's what we're here about. Who was Saul Alinsky? Saul Alinsky was a community organizer in Chicago in the 1960s. And he had attended the obviously Chicago 1968 Democratic National Convention, where there were riots out there. I mean, there was all different types of mayhem. And he went out there and he said to the people, hey, look, this is not the way of doing this. This ain't the way to do this. You have to organize. You have to have a whole set of things going on there. Eventually, someone did a very famous person interviewed him and did her master's project in college. I'm sorry, her senior project at college for this, named Hillary Clinton, right? And it was really interesting reading to read her master's project for, her senior project based on a whole series of conversations with Saul Alinsky. But essentially, as an aside, if you want to read this book, and then the other book, The Rules for Radicals, and the other book is Will, by a friend of mine, a former friend of mine, passed away recently, G. Gordon Liddy, who I had associated with him for many years when he was involved with his radio show. We always met at a convention. We always hung out together at the convention. And it was G. Gordon Liddy was Will, his autobiography, where he gives the other side of the story with the riots and how that relates to Watergate. Very interesting guy. So, power is not what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have. Rule number 1. What does that mean? That could go into many different areas. And I'm sure you've heard this before. I've worked here a long time. I am insert your favorite relationship or association. Leave me alone and don't rock the boat, or I'll make trouble. Really? What's the effect of that? You can't do your job, and you later find out the person is usually full of gluvno. The guy's not telling the truth, usually a man. Never met a woman to do that, but plenty of men do that, all right? You're hired to manage people like this sometimes. You have to have in your head, how am I going to manage them? Right? And be ready for this. Non-combative, because things will be switched around on you, which is a telltale sign of a psychopath. Never go outside the expertise is 2 and 3. Never go outside the expertise of your people, and whenever possible, go outside the expertise of the enemy. So, old-fashioned game of distraction. So you're in a meeting with a safety issue and with somebody, and what do you get? You get the Chewbacca defense. What's the Chewbacca defense? It's from South Park, 1998, Chef Aid, right? Right. The Chewbacca defense is a strategy where the criminal defense lawyer tries to confuse the jury rather than refute the case of the prosecutor. It is an intentional distraction or obfuscation. So, right, rule number 2, game of distraction, right? Rule number 2, go out to the expertise. They're going to bring up all different types of unrelated baloney. That's basically what it comes down to. And then what happens? They're going to try to go outside your expertise. So if you're a young safety professional, an inexperienced safety professional, very easy to go outside your expertise. But there are ways of managing that. You try to bring them in. How would you handle that? Ask a question. Always ask a question. You seem very experienced in this area. Well, I'm really interested on what you're going to say on this, what your input is, right? Now, the other thing is, whenever possible, go outside the expertise of the enemy. So if you know more than somebody, try not to be arrogant. Maybe you want to say, well, look, this is what I've heard, and I blah, 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 on this. Non-confrontational. I don't know, you would never hear of the Chewbacca defense, right? Never thought you'd hear that on the Rated R Safety Show. Rule number 4, make the enemy live up to its own book of rules. What does that mean? Don't make a rule you cannot enforce or won't enforce or you don't plan to follow yourself. Real simple. Number 5, ridicule is man's most potent weapon. There's low response against ridicule. They can ridicule you all day long. Very difficult to come up with a strategy on ridicule. But I'm going to say this. It's one of those things that if they know it bothers you, they're going to continue to do it. I try to get this across to younger safety professionals. They're trying to manipulate you into a situation. They're trying to get you to make the wrong decision, talk you into the wrong decision. They're trying to make you do 1,000,001 things. So what do? Don't take yourself too seriously, right? Don't get upset with anything, right? You get upset with anything, right? That brings out more of the ridicule. Get the leadership on board with safety. When the workforce leadership is on board with safety, usually this sort of ridicule stops because if they're ridiculing you, they're ridiculing management. And that's usually not a very good strategy. Rule number 6 and 7, right? A good tactic is one your people enjoy. A tactic that drags on too long becomes a drag. So this goes from rule number 5, right? If you show that it doesn't get you upset, chances are they're going to stop. But this could also be used against them. Not against, but with them. If you have a safety program that nobody is interested in, change the safety program. Change your approach. Change the incentive program. Right? Same thing, right? I was in at a facility where they went out and they said, we want an idea for that everybody can get along around. That's not going to cost us any money, but it's going to be a good incentive. And I said, you know what? I have a great idea. Why don't we have a parking spot award? They said, well, what do you mean? You do something safe on the job, you get the premium parking spot. And when it's in the middle of the winter and people got to walk a quarter mile rather than 200 foot, I think you might get some good incentives there. Oh, everybody got excited. It was actually one of the most successful programs that they ever had because it was cheap. All of the cost was parking hang tags for the mirror, which were made out of laminated paper, right? Took a little bit of tracking, and they were going to plan on tracking anyway, but this is what somebody got behind you. So you got to learn an activity that the workforce enjoys, is easy to do, is cheap, because believe it, moolah means everything, and gives some kind of results. The opposite gives you the opposite results. So if you're there with an old safety program that doesn't work or is stale or the workforce can't relate to, you're going to have a problem. Now, when I started my HOP journey, human organizational performance journey, right? I said, how the hell am I going to make this work for a construction company? How am I going to do it? I found a way. Why? Part of being successful, whether it's in radio, if it's in safety, if it's in podcasting, if it's on anything else, part of the way to, you have to say what people already know, deep down in their heart. You have to convey, if you could draw out what's in their heart, what they know to be true, you're going to be much more successful in communicating. For me, that's what human organizational performance is. HOP. Remember, A little bit of a pause there. I'm getting over COVID right now, right? And that's what you need to do is relate to the workforce. You have to talk to the people. Set up that there learning team that we're always talking about here. Learn their job, right? And this is the way it's done here. And if you have a problem workforce, they're going to continue to circumvent your efforts if they enjoy it. So maybe that would be a place where you could get management involved on that. I don't know. You got to find a solution to your own problems. I'm just identifying the problems. Keep the pressure on. Rule number 8. What is that? Once the workforce finds your weak spot, they will focus on it and undermine you, constantly undermine you. So what do you need to do? You need to fill in the gaps to your knowledge, right? That's one way. Learn their job, learning team, right? Include them in the discussion as a subject matter expert, if they are truly subject matters, right? SME, right? That people, right? But the thing is, try not to have a weak spot. Don't let them in on what your weak spot. And if it's a weak spot, I say, you know what? I've only know this as a trainer and as working around construction sites since I'm 16, right? Mostly managing safety. So maybe Joe over there, he might be the person who you're having an issue with. Maybe he knows something more than I know. Maybe I gotta talk with Joe, sit down, man to man, cup of coffee, talk about it with them. Hey, how do we do this? When you give them ownership, they're more likely to work with you. I got a call from a listener a couple of weeks ago. Says, hey, Jimmy, I was listening to you the other night. I said, hey, how you doing? And he said, I'm having a problem with these freaking checklists. My company has these checklists, and I was giving the order to go out and redo the checklist so people will actually use it as a checklist and not as a pencil whipping thing. I said, well, there's a lot of things you can do. There's a book out there called the Checklist Manifesto, and right. But what I would suggest you do is, why don't you involve the employees? Well, really? I said, yeah, involve their employees. Every item on that checklist may not be necessary. You can combine items and everything, but I can almost guarantee that if you have an experience, I said, how old are your operators? How long have they been doing this? They're all in their 50s. I said, okay, maybe those operators for that equipment know what the critical items are on that equipment. And if you don't check, you don't examine, everything's going to go to Guvino. He says, great idea on that, right? With that. Rule number 9. If you can learn rule number 9, you probably got about 35% of this whole thing, right? The threat is usually more terrifying than the thing yourself. And the point is, your imagination is your own worst enemy. Don't let your imagination run wild. As a former business partner of mine said, if someone tells you or else, take the or else. I'm going to do or else. Okay, I'll take the or else. This goes back to our story yesterday with John, the shop steward, trying to make a fool out of me, with this and, out of safety, trying to get me thrown off the job. I said to him, hey, John, let's go up there just as a refresher. No, I'll back you up. You're very articulate and everything else. And then he said, well, I'm going to do, I was like, okay, you do what you got to do. I'll do what I got to do. Right? So I'm going to tell you, take it from the voice of experience. Your own imagination is usually your worst enemy on all this stuff. Your imagination and these negative thoughts, negative thinking, anything like that, is going to do more to damage you and your career and where you're going than anything else. So if someone's going to threaten you, okay, let them threaten you. I'm going to tell you, take it from someone who was at rock bottom not once, but twice. Rock bottom is not that scary once you've been there. It ain't. That's what makes it. That's what makes it so dangerous sometimes. Because what happens is you hit rock bottom, you're not really afraid of it. But before you hit rock bottom the first time, you're afraid of it. Imagine the power you could have over your situation, over yourself, if these threats that people make didn't matter. You completely disarm them. If you don't let it down, if you don't let them piss you off, they have no authority over you. They have no power over you. You don't feed their ego. And that usually will drive someone nuts. If you're threatening you and it doesn't matter, it's serious. Because if they're smart, they're going to say, well, maybe we can't threaten this person. Now we have to work with the person. Or maybe it lets their imagination run wild. How's that? Their imagination running wild. So the major premise for tactics is rule number 10. Is the development of operations that will maintain a constant pressure upon the opposition. So this comes in many, many, many different forms. If you look up many books on workplace bullying, you're going to find out that these are all from those things. There's basically 5 different areas that they have here for this, that apply to this. So this is where a problem arises and a whole bunch of problems happen on the same day. They come to you same 2 or 3 days with loads of problems. It's often, I don't want to sound conspiratorial here, it's often not random, right? Sometimes it is, but it's often all the problems come and they on the same day. Why? To keep the pressure on and to bully you. Contact you on days off for non-urgent issues. Jay Allen, our leader, has spoken about this many times, where you have to set boundaries with your workforce, with your employees, with your clients. So, for example, when I went on my honeymoon, I knew I had a client that would cause a lot of along these issues, right? And what I ended up having to do was I ended up saying, look, I'm going on my honeymoon for 10 days. I've never had a vacation, real vacation, since 1999, and this was 2011. So this is what I'm delegating it to another person that I'm paying to be on call to handle your issues. I'm not going to be out of the country and unavailable. Please do not contact me. Contact this person. Guess what? They never contacted. Same thing in the workplace. I have a relative that's extremely high up in a major university. She's one of the leaders in the Northeast on human resources in the university field. And she says, look, when you get a job, you got to find out what's the requirements. Are you available on call for 24/7 or not? If not, you need to set boundaries. Here you go. Change paperwork, lose paperwork, then blame you. This is pretty much easily remedied now with a thing called a smartphone. All right. That is basically it. You could go and photograph or scan in, and there are many different programs to scan paperwork in. There's no excuse nowadays to lose paperwork. I'm going through a situation right now where a client needed paperwork from 2 years ago. I had everything scanned in. I sent it over to her. Right? Took me a day to find it, right, and everything else because it was in our archives in our cloud, but we got it to her. change paperwork. That often happens where companies change paperwork and don't issue updated paperwork. Right. And then they say, well, hey, you should have known we changed paperwork. What do I know? Steel resources, something as simple as a dry erase marker for a presentation, to actual taking equipment. How many times do you think, especially when I was inexperienced, I would go into to do a presentation. I'm a whiteboard kind of guy. Love the whiteboard. Now everybody laughs because during my safety classes, everybody gets a notebook, everybody gets a pen, and everybody gets a notebook and a pen, and I get to write on the whiteboard a lot of stuff. And they said, Jimmy, nobody ever writes on the whiteboard. It's all PowerPoint. I said, look, most of us grew up on the whiteboard or a chalkboard. One time I had a chalkboard. So you come in there and they steal all the dry erase markers and all the erasers. Happens all the time. Why do you think I carry around a dry erase marker and erasers all the time? For that reason. I have my own projector. I have 2 computers I carry around, one and a backup. I also have a backup. I have everything available for the smartphone. And then you have the general sabotage, right? By the way, you're thinking, well, Jim, no, the first time I used this was at a university that I was teaching at. And one of them said, I went from Jimmy Posel to Professor Posel in about 10 minutes. This is Professor Posel. This is the most that we've gotten out of how to manage people in our entire program. This is a management program. And you work with some pretty fouled up people. What's the other one? Right? So if you push a negative hard and deep enough, it will break through to its counter side. So basically, you have to make a negative into a positive. You have to have a plan. If you're pushing something negative, well, what's your plan? Right? What's your plan? If they continue to hammer away, hard and deep enough, walking away is always an option because this is meant to manipulate you. Right? All of this is meant to manipulate you into doing things that you probably don't want to do. The price of it, number 12, the price of a successful attack is a constructive alternative. All right. So if someone attacks you, they have to have a constructive alternative. Otherwise, you know what they're called? A blowhard. So what I try to do is, look, I don't know what the solution is here. I have no idea. What's the solution? You go from, don't criticize, give a solution. Go from no because to yes if. Can we do this or not? Can we do blah, 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 blah. Okay. Do you want to get hit with no because? No, because it's the OSHA says. Turns out OSHA says a lot, but most of the time they don't cover your specific situation. No, OSHA says. That's not the kind of answer people are looking for. How about if you change it around to yes if? Can we do X, Y, and Z? Yes, if we could do blah, 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 blah. It opens up a world of possibilities. Maybe you get with a learning team, you sit down and you talk to people. You try to work things out. You be nice, nicey nice. You try to involve them, give them ownership. Right? This is all about leadership, a lot of this stuff. But what happens? Back in the younger days, I used to do all this. I'm guilty as charged here. But you have to work with people. You have to give solutions. Right? Optimism and giving a solution is, it's an important thing, right? On many different levels. Rule number 13. This is the last one here, right? Pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. What does that mean, really? Divide and conquer, old-fashioned bullying. Here are some of my examples that I list. I list a whole bunch of them. not including you in meetings or not telling you about meetings you should be at. Happens all the time. Not giving you the correct equipment that you need. So you say that you need a 6-foot shock, a 6-foot self-retracting lanyard for fall protection. They give you a 6-foot shock absorbing lanyard. Big freaking difference, right? Not giving you the correct equipment that you need, breaking the equipment you need. That happens. There's a major contractor that everybody in New Jersey has heard of, where the owner of the company went out and deliberately broke air monitoring equipment, so he didn't have. So he can, one, blame us for broken equipment, number one, and number two, this is way back in the 1990s, right? Number one, and number two, so there was no possibility of us shutting the work down because of bad air levels. Unreasonable time frames, rushing an accident investigation. They go hand in hand. Or do you have reasonable time frames that you can work under? Right? I know sometimes you get into a crunch, but is it happening all the time where you're putting out fires all the time? So the proverbial fire. How about rushing an accident investigation? That happens all the time. We got to have that in by the close of business. No, you need that initial report. This is basically what happened. You don't need a full-blown accident investigation done. By the way, OSHA, when they do an accident investigation, they have up until 6 months, and more often than not, they issue it 5 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days after they visit your site. All right? If you're going to be rushing an accident investigation, you're not going to have good results. Real simple. Doesn't get anything different. Now you're going to say, well, yeah, but if someone did something that's simple, okay, they did something simple. Well, all right, maybe. But chances are you have to go in there and probe a little bit. There's an accident investigation and there's an accident investigation, right? Do you want a one-pager or do you want a real one where we're going to find out what the incentives are, why a person did what they did, why a system failed, right? And I'm not going to be one to blame the employees. I haven't done that in 3 years. And this all goes back to what we had before, right? Well, we mentioned early in the intro here, where you cannot go out there and be effective without speaking to the person's heart, knowing what they know, trying to do what they know, what they do, talking to them. If you can relate something to them and say what they know to be true in their heart, you're going to be a much more effective safety professional. Here's some more examples. I got a whole bunch of them. Not giving you resources, time, or personnel to do the job. Big one. No professional training or development. That's a big one. Because some organizations feel a smart safety person is a dangerous safety person, right? Or a workforce. They don't give any training out. Or you're a safety professional, you could give the training. And it's like, well, what kind of training you want me to give? We are right now organizing our 2023 safety training programs for all of our clients. Not giving you a scope of work for a contract. When I worked in corporate America, that was yes, I'm having a drinking problem here. I'm smelling seltzer water. What is this with the seltzer water with all the flavors? I don't know. All right. That's what happened. Not giving you a scope of work for a contract. So if you don't know what the job is, how the hell are you supposed to do it? Happens all the time. So always ask for that scope. And then if it doesn't get right, well, you didn't ask for it. But then if you ask for it and they don't give it to you, then it's still your fault. But make sure you document this. Colluding with others, meaning ganging up on you, distracting you from your duties. In construction, this is what we run into this problem all the time. A contractor, a subcontractor doing work they didn't tell you about. That means no job hazard analysis, no instructions, training, the whole thing, right? Well, we were doing this, but then we decided to do this. Well, you're not set up to do that. Probably the worst thing, and I mean the worst possible thing that you could do and you can face and you could experience is blindsiding. Inevitably, in business, blindsiding happens and it's unintentional. You got to discern what's intentional and what's not intentional. It happens all the time. Hey, Jimmy, I forgot to tell you X, Y, and Z. Or Jimmy, or, we left this. That happens. That's normal. That's the normal course of business. When it is on a major thing and there is no documentation and they blindside you on something, that's a problem. How do I combat this? I have meetings with people. I visit clients. I have a worker around on a site, or if I'm on a site, hey, do we got anything coming up that I should know about? Or, and this is a regular conversation. Don't be afraid to have that conversation. An email, hey, everything went well today. You break out the keyboard. Hey, everything went well today. Blah, 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 blah. Is there anything coming up that I should know? Easy email, easy text message, easy conversation to have. That's often is what short circuits this, because then it's like, hey, I asked, you didn't tell me, right? It's not that you're trying to blame the other person here, but it's like, look, I ask routinely, should we know about this? I talk about scopes of work, what they're doing. You got to be on top of things. This happened last week on one of my projects that I manage. All of a sudden, they want to use a forklift. Okay, great. Are you folks trained on that forklift? Oh, well, you're going to need that. I would not have gotten that had I not asked them. They would have just shown up and said, well, we're using the forklift. Well, guess what? If you're not trained to use the forklift, you don't have credentials, you're not using the forklift. Real simple. All right, but this would have been the whole thing. That's the only reason I just got to be on top of things and try to anticipate issues. So, if this is skipping around, just realize I'm recovering from COVID right now, and we had to stop to take care of some stuff. All right, safety. So now this all impacts, right? All these rules we've gone through. What about mental health? How does this impact your mental health if you have to deal with this stuff, right? Burnout, depression, PTSD, especially if you're a first responder, right? There is a lot in a lot of first responder workplaces. This is like normal. There's bullying and everything else. Why? Because you're a first responder. And and things have got to happen in a certain way because according to your training, people are not that nice and they don't want to work with someone who they can't trust. All right. So a lot of these strategies, again, and everything else that's in here, these are all, right, I hear from, by the way, I'm not a first responder, but I hear from them all the time. Many of my friends are first responders. I have the utmost respect for them. All right. Believe me, they do. But anyway, right? If you need help, you got a secret. If you're in a toxic work environment, I'm going to tell you just leave it. It's not worth it. Eventually, it'll destroy you. You'll have health issues. You'll have diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, the whole thing. The strength, it's hard. It's hard to deal with this stuff. And this is, I read a lot. All right. I don't know. Some other people, they love, especially now with the videos, and I like to watch videos. I like to listen to record. I've always been a fan of the recorded word, of the spoken word, right? Going back from when I was child in the 70s, listening to WOR. And every once in a while, everyone knows I'm from New Jersey. You're going to be a Springsteen fan. And I'm watching his movie, Western Stars. And this is a little bit of thing, right? Wisdom from Springsteen. The older you get, the heavier that baggage becomes that you haven't sorted out. So you pay the price the older you get, the higher that price is. There's some people out there, mental health issues. And Jay Allen always talks about the suicide hotline and everything else. If you're having those thoughts, go to that hotline, seek help, right? You got to sort through this stuff. When I was 50 years old, I had and this is not a woe is me moment. I did not have an easy life, right? Zero skills, soft skills, personality issues, right? Because of bullying and psychological abuse I had to deal with as a teenager and in grammar school. And when I hit a milestone age, I said, you know what? None of this stuff matters. I can't let this bother me for the rest of my days. You could call that a midlife crisis or whatever. Whatever. But you need to go and unload all this stuff. When I gave this presentation for the first time, it was officially, professionally, outside of, first time was at the university I teach at. Second time was with in front of the OSHA outreach training recertification class. And I told the guys, so look, I have a phenomenal hand protection presentation. I think everybody here has seen it. I got all 4 outreach credentials. I have something so radically different that I wanted to show it to you folks. I got done with this presentation. I got up to this point. I said, well, what are your comments? They're giving me comments and everything else. The first thing they said was knock out 3 rules, make it 10. 10 is a nice round number. I said, no, I'll keep it in. The second thing they said was this wound, every safety professional in there was like 15 people. They're like, we're wounded by our workplaces. We have problems in our workplaces and everything else. This was a presentation that they needed to hear. It's okay to have problems, but you have to work on solutions and get the negative thoughts out of your head. Took me a lifetime. Took me 24 years to get the negative thoughts out of my head. Negativity. It's a destroyer. It will destroy you. It's going to make you unhappy. Go to the other part. Be an optimist. And let's remember, changing your corporate culture, don't look for a quick fix. Sometimes it might happen. You might get lucky. Quick fix. But somebody has to pay the price. It's usually a catastrophic situation that happens with that. And understanding all of these rules, here are the 13 rules, will not only help you manage difficult people and situations, but ultimately, we're going to be saving lives, which is why we are safety professionals. For Safety Wars, this is Jim Polzel. So, before we go, I wanted to talk about who we are. And of course, thank Jay Allen again. Safety Wars, our podcast and our Safety Wars live show on Safety FM is, we're every weeknight between, okay, let's start that again. Before we go, I wanted to just talk about who we are. Take 3. Okay, before we go, I just wanted to discuss who we are. We are Safety Wars. We are a podcast. We are a live programming here on Safety FM. We're heard every night from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. on safetyfm.com. You could download the app at your favorite app store. And we are also available on your favorite podcast network, or I think we're on like 35 podcast networks, like most of the people here on Safety FM. And we're available. There's Safety Wars, or you may be Jim Polzel's Safety Wars. And yes, that is a registered trademark. So if you need us, it's for me, Jim at safetywars.com, or you can call us at 845-269-5772. I look forward to working with you in the very near future. And have a nice day.